Others. Or Archie. These arms.
Oh, sing, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Others. Others. Arch.
Please remain standing. I invite Reverend Cami Dewey, priest in charge of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Casper, to give the invocation. Please remain standing for the invocation.
If you'll indulge me a few words before we pray. The liturgical season of Lent begins on Wednesday, and we Episcopalians, along with our Catholic, Lutheran, Methodist, and Presbyterian siblings, among others, mark the start of the season by placing the sign of the cross upon our foreheads with ashes. This is a reminder that it is from dust that we come, and it is to dust we will inevitably return. Our fallibility, our weakness, and our mortality are put on display a little bit this season. And these weeks can be uncomfortable for many Christians. Most really just want to get to the good part of the resurrection of Jesus at Easter and don't want to focus on the hard stuff of Lent. But there's real beauty to be found in this season that asks us to face our impermanence. While we can't hold on to everything forever, we can plant seeds that will bear fruit for the future, even if we don't get to see the outcome for ourselves. These lives, our homes, this earth, and yes, this government is only ours, yours, to steward for a little while. And while your work won't be perfect, I'm sure your constituents make sure you're well aware of that. It is yours to do your best work for now, until you pass it on to the next generation, who will care for it for their time. So now let us pray for the good work you will do in the weeks to come. O God, you are the fountain of all our wisdom, and we give you thanks for that wisdom revealed to us as we go about the work you have given us to do in the world you have created with the time we have to do it. Bless and guide the senators in the legislature of this, the greatest state of Wyoming, that people from every peak and valley of her beautiful landscape may know the fruit of their good work. Keep their hearts and minds focused on respectful discourse and mutually beneficial outcomes. And above all, may your love and grace lead them in all things, both in and out of this chamber. These things we lay before you with humility and gratitude for the many blessings bestowed upon each and every one of us. Through the grace and peace of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Day 1 roll call, Monday, February 12th, 2024. Anderson?
Here.
Baldwin? Barlow?
Present.
Beitman?
Here.
Boner? Bouchard? Brennan? Case?
Present.
Cooper?
Here.
Dockstetter?
Here.
Ellis? French? Murphy?
Here.
Guru?
Here.
Hicks?
Here.
Hutchings?
Here.
Ide?
Here.
Jones? Kinsky?
Here.
Kolb?
Present.
Landon?
Here.
Larson?
Here.
McEwen?
Here.
Nethercott? Pappas? Rothfuss?
Here.
Salazar? Schuler? Scott?
Here.
Steinmetz? President Driscoll?
Present.
31 present.
Thank you. Would now entertain privileges from the floor. Senator Beitman. Granted. Thank you and sorry.
It's all right. We're working out the kinks. It's good to be back. Mr. President, members of the Senate, I just wanted to introduce to you today one of the most talented young ladies I've had the chance of ever meeting, and she just so happens to be a constituent of mine. And Sergeant Bridger, Miss Wyoming, you heard her sing twice now today. You can attest to that talent, and I would just like to share with you a little bit about her bio and just how amazing this young lady is and what kind of an impact she has in our community here in Sheridan. And she's really truly a Wyoming treasure and something that we should be all proud of. Beck Bridger, Miss Wyoming USA 2023, is a 27-year-old Wyoming woman who was blessed with the gift of adoption at birth. She is a sergeant in the Wyoming Army National Guard, a graduate of the U.S. Army School of Music, and a decorated vocalist for the 67th U.S. Army Band, Wyoming's Own. As a female in the armed forces, she founded the Warrior Woman Project, a platform created to advocate for women entering the U.S. military. She works for a global nonprofit organization, Bought Beautifully, that works to create fair working wages for women around the world who've overcome human trafficking and domestic violence from countries like Rwanda, Peru, Jordan, and more. In the last 2 years, Bought Beautifully has provided 11,000 days of sustainable employment, empowering women around the world through fair trade fashion industry. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, what you're getting with Sergeant Bridger. And I've seen her in action when she's around young ladies in our community. They just light up. And she is truly a treasure to be treasured. And I am happy to introduce Miss Wyoming Beck Bridger.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me today, and an extended thank you to Senator Beitman, who has just championed me throughout all my years, and another special shout out to Senator Dave Kinsky, who has been a family friend of our family. It is an incredible honor to serve the state of Wyoming, not only as Miss Wyoming USA 2023, but also a sergeant in the Wyoming Army National Guard. The heart behind my mission is to empower women to pursue anything that their heart is calling them to pursue, whether that's enlisting in the US military or entering a pageant. So it's my prayer and hope that my national anthem touched you today and that I can continue being a light for our state and our nation. So thank you so much and have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. Further praise, Senator Landon.
Mr. President, may I have the privilege of the floor, please?
Granted.
Thank you very much. Fellow senators, this is a pretty special day for me. I'm careful not to keep this button because a couple of the buttons will pop off. I'm really happy to have my son Zach and his wife Alex here today, all the way from Big Sky, Montana. Zach is a vice president in operations at the Big Sky Ski Resort. If you've never been there, you really need to go. It's a beautiful place, and now you'll know somebody who can hook you up. His beautiful wife Alex is in the doctorate program at a university south of here, not that university, not the one that we don't mention, but the bigger one down further south, and she's studying in the doctorate of pharmacy program. And my beautiful wife, Robin, is sitting there with them. And so would you please welcome them to the Wyoming Senate?
Here, here. Welcome. Thank you, Senator Landon. We like your family. Senator Cooper.
Privilege of the floor, please, Mr. President.
Granted.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it's a huge privilege for me today to introduce one of our newest interns from Pinedale, Wyoming, my great niece. She's not just a good niece, she's a great niece, Miss Kelsey Cooper. Kelsey, could you stand up?
Senator Hicks, do you need a privilege? I will take a quick one for myself. I would like you all to welcome my wife, Sandy. Been there through the years, sitting on the far bench. Kind of the heart of our operation, and she doesn't make it here on the floor a whole lot, so please join me in. Join me here. Then back to the script. It's supposed to be this. Senator Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have the privilege of the floor?
Granted.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring my wife into the picture here. I just want to congratulate her for standing by me through all this legislative session and helping me, and just welcome her back here as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
Seeing no further, okay. Doctor of the day is Jason Bloomberg, MD, Family Medicine, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Back of the room, let's give him a hearty welcome and hope we don't need you. They said he's also, I goofed up part, he's an overnight hospitalist at the VA, so he's an extra special doctor. So, introduction of bills. Correct? You want to go back? Okay. Notice the guy. All right, back on different scripts, huh? Thank you, Ellen. I always appreciate getting put where I need to be. Appreciate it. Notice to the governor. The Senate will now turn to our order of business. I direct the chief clerk to notify His Excellency, the governor, that the 2024 budget session of the Senate, 67th Wyoming State Legislature, is organized and ready to receive any communication he may desire to submit. Scheduled meeting times for Senate Agriculture and Senate Transportation. I direct the chief clerk to notify the House that the 2024 budget session of the Senate, 67th Wyoming State Legislature, is organized and ready to receive any communications they may desire to submit. Okay. Scheduled meeting times for the Senate Agriculture and Senate Transportation have been changed as follows. Senate Agriculture will meet Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 a.m. and Senate Transportation will meet Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays following noon recess. I have named Senator Tara Nethercott as Chairman of Appropriations. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I object and move pursuant to Senate Rule 8-6 to appeal the decision of the president and to appoint Senator Nethercott, Chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and further move that the chairmanship of the Senate Appropriations Committee revert to Senator Kinski as ratified by the Senate on January 10th, 2023, and is specified in the Journal of the State of that date. And Mr. President, I object on the basis of process, not personalities, or the people this will affect today. I object because we are stewards of the governing institution known as the State Senate. The institution existed before each of us and will exist after we are gone. We only steward the public trust for a short time and must preserve the institution for the people and their representatives in the State Senate to come. With that, I will read to you the objection letter I submitted in May to the President of the Senate. On May 1st of 2023, I wrote, I am writing in my official capacity as a duly elected senator of Senate District 3. Please consider this my official objection to your letter dated April 28th of 2023 regarding the Senate Appropriations Chairman. Although your letter was addressed to the 66th Wyoming Senate, I assume you mean it was the 67th. The basis for my objection, Senate Rule 2H, changes in committee membership. No change shall be made in any committee except by a vote of a majority of the members of the Senate. The President of the Senate may appoint a member to fill a vacancy occurring on any Senate standing committee during the interim, providing the appointment is made with the advance and respective majority and minority leader, dependent upon the party in which the vacancy has occurred. The Senate is a body ratified the membership and the chairman on January 10th of the legislative session as reflected in the Senate Journal, and you will find this packet on your desk for your to look at. The Senate as a whole is clearly the appointing authority. Otherwise, committees would begin meeting before ratification of the membership and chairman on the opening day of session. See Mason's 600I. Number 3, in the history of the Wyoming legislature, neither a speaker nor president has removed a committee chairman. According to Mason's 4.2, rules of the legislative are derived from several sources and take precedence in order listed below. The principal sources are as follows. A, constitutional provisions and judicial decisions. B, adopted rules. C, custom usage and precedents. D, statutory provisions. E, adopted parliamentary authority. And F, parliamentary law. Clearly, this has never been done before and is unprecedented both in process and custom. I would urge you to change course and restore order to the Senate so that we may continue to conduct orderly business of the Senate. This kind of maneuver creates unnecessary chaos and is not conducive to the methodical, deliberative nature of the Senate, nor consistent with our governing rules. Respectfully submitted, Senator Sherry Steinmetz. And according to our opening general session, our journal committee that we all approved, and our journal committee chairman, the appropriations committee that we voted on without objection or ratified without objection, appropriations, Senator Dave Kinski, chairman, Senators Jim Anderson, Chair Nethercott, Tim Salazar, and Mike Garou. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I know that this motion is debatable and appears to be in order, but Mr. President, I think the motion is inappropriate for the legislature to consider at this time. And I'm very concerned about opening this particular motion, this appeal of the decision of the president to a full debate. The good senator in her statements pointed out the chaos and the challenges and the institutional importance of these types of issues, and I agree with that. I agree with the fact that we need to protect and preserve the institution above personalities, above any individual, above any particular decision. And everyone in this chamber has heard me speak many times in the past about how this institution is a special institution that doesn't operate the way they do in Congress in Washington, D.C. It doesn't operate the way that legislatures around the country operate, where they focus on divisivity, they focus on personalities, and they focus on doing things that are more about personal politics than about the people of the state of Wyoming. This is a challenge to that sensibility. If we get to the point where we move to a debate on this particular issue, on whether we should overturn the decision of the presiding officer, and then move to a decision of which of two appropriations chairmen we choose to put in the chair, then we've moved beyond debating policy and we've moved into debating personalities. And that would be regrettable, in my view. It's certainly not the way to start the day off. Start the legislature off this session. So, Mr. President, I'm going to offer an alternative for consideration, which is to not have to debate this issue. I'm going to offer a motion in a moment to lay this appeal on the table, which is also in order. If the motion is successful, it would end debate at this point. It would not quash the motion entirely. That motion would still be on the table. It would give some opportunity perhaps to look at things like alternative rules, maybe look forward, try to find a way to work through this situation without having have to come to a floor debate, which I know everyone in here, including myself, is uncomfortable with the prospect of. I know everyone is. I've talked to most everybody in this chamber. Nobody wants this situation. Nobody wants to have to deal with it. If we lay this appeal on the table, an undebatable motion, we can get away from this particular debate. We can move on with the business on behalf of the people of the state of Wyoming without the acrimony and division that this motion might create. So, Mr. President, at this time, I would make the motion. I will move to lay this appeal on the table. That is a simple majority vote with no debate. And to be clear, Mr. President, the motion is still available to potentially be brought back up by a majority as an order of business if this can't be remedied in a different way, or if there is a desire by the overall body. But this is not the time, this is not the method, and this is not the place, Mr. President. So with that, I move to lay this motion on the table.
Thank you. Non-debatable, Chief Clerk will call the roll. Excuse me? Senator Hicks.
Not to
Mr.
debate the
Attorney.
motion, just
Yeah.
point of clarification. So can you state to the body effectually what does a yes vote do? And what does a no vote do?
Excuse me?
Maybe the bringer of the motion.
Yeah, his mic's on. He's not talking into it apparently. I got a complaint. You weren't talking into your mic, so.
So, Mr. President, this is not a debate, it's an inquiry.
Yes, sir.
The inquiry is that the bringer of the motion can clearly state if you vote in the affirmative for the motion to lay this back, what does that do?
Thank you.
Likewise, if you vote against the motion to lay it back, what did that do?
Thank you. Good point. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. A vote of aye supports the motion to lay it on the table and ends debate on this topic. A vote of no would defeat the motion to lay it on the table, and we return back to the motion and the debate. So aye lays it on the table and terminates debate, Mr. President. I hope that clarifies.
Thank you. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Roll call. Anderson. Baldwin. Barlow. Whitman. No. Boner. No. Bouchard. No. Brennan. No. No. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. No. Ellis. Aye. French. No. Murphy. Aye. Baru. Aye. Hicks.
No.
No. Hutchings. No. Ide. No. Jones. No. Kinsky. No. Cole. No. Landon. Aye. Larson. No. McEwen.
No.
No. Nethercott. No. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. No. Schuler. Aye. Scott. No. Steinmetz. No. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On the motion to lay the appeal on the table, 13 ayes, 18 noes.
Thank you. The motion has failed. This appeal is in order in accordance with Mason's chapter 23, sections 240 to 245. The motion is debatable. Senate Rule 8-6 establishes that a decision of the president can be appealed and overturned by a majority vote of the members present. At this point, debate begins on the appeal. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I want to address this motion. And, you know, frankly, this is not the parliamentary procedure I anticipated was going to be used, but that's fine. What I want to say at the outset, it's unfortunate we're being asked to choose between two individuals that have both served this Senate very well, served the people of Wyoming very well, and provided considerable, effective, and very good leadership to the rest of us. And I really dislike the personal aspect of this. And I think as we go forward, Mr. President, that how all of us, and I mean all of us, each one of us here, including the people involved, and including those of us who are not part of this dispute, but all of us, how we handle this going forward is going to make a big difference in whether the Senate can retain the full benefit of the wisdom and the leadership, Mr. President, of the individuals involved, which I think is very valuable to us. And I think if things play out the way they should, both of them will probably go forward and be leaders in the Senate in the future. And they're both very good members. And the way I think we ought to proceed on this is that we ought to decide, is it proper to give the presiding officer, the President of the Senate, the authority to remove a chairman or not? It's frankly, I think the current situation, the rules are just plain unclear, Mr. President. And we are going to need to decide that. And there's some real pros and cons in that. But that's not the motion before us I thought would be the motion before us. It's not. So, Mr. President, as we proceed with this motion, I think people ought to think what should be the rule going forward. And Mr. President, I would say that I hope as we do go forward, and frankly, I will tell you that I think probably the president should not have that power. I think but there's some factors we can get into when that rule is before us. But I would recall to the members of the Senate that the culture we have had here in the Senate has been that we can debate the issues up and down and take sides and oppose the other side and talk to the substance of issues. But that we will maintain the professional respect that we all have for every member. And Mr. President, that we will all start the debate as friends, continue the debate as friends, and end the debate as friends. And I think that's the way we ought to operate. I think it's a tradition, Mr. President. It has given the Senate great strength.
And frankly, I will say to you, as a matter, and this is very personal to me, but a matter of religious faith, that I think that's the way we ought to treat other people. And I hope that we will manage this thing on that basis. And I hope that the real debate will come on what should be the rule going forward. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that is our question here. It's the rule going forward, and our senior senator has clarified that. And that's what I would like to see us do, is debate the rule, not the personalities. Because I have great respect for two individuals here that were mentioned. One, I even put my full endorsement to a statewide race. I have great respect, but our decision here is the rule at question, and I think that's what we should be voting on. And Mr. President, if we need a clarification to the original motion, then I'd ask for that now. But that's what we're deciding here. That's what our decision is.
That is not the motion. The motion is Senator Landon.
Mr. President, I was going to make that clarification. I'll
Proceed. This is not debate. This is point of order. So if we're going to get into debate, this for
Thank you, Mr.
both of you, it's not. Go ahead, Senator Landon.
Mr. President, you made the point that I was going to make on behalf of the motion. I will take a minute, if that's okay with you, to weigh in.
Real quick, I'm going to interrupt tiny. If we're going to go into this, I ask your indulgence that we use third reading rules as far as this, which means, and if you don't like it, anybody can speak up, but it means you can speak twice, 5 minutes. After twice, you're done. It's our standard third one. Everyone gets a chance to talk their first time before someone gets up the second time. When the sponsor has spoken for the last time, the debate will be finished and we will proceed immediately to a vote. Thank you, and sorry to interrupt you, Senator Landon.
No, Mr. President, that was the second point of order. The first point of order, just for clarification, is no, we are not voting on a rule change. That would require a different vote total anyway, and be presented in a different way. And then the second piece was exactly that, Mr. President, is how do we want to handle what looks to be a debate forthcoming? And I think you just outlined that. And if you have the right to just decide that, then I guess it's decided. But
With
for all the
consent, I
senators out
think I
here,
can.
how are we going to handle, how we want to talk about this issue? So I'll sit for now. Thank you.
Senator Hicks.
Chairman, not to wade in on the debate, but the point of clarification, and sometimes just for clarification, you guys always have the script that we have in front of us, but there is another proposed rule change that will come up a little bit later this morning I think, to address the question on the rules issue. So that's not the issue that we're debating right now or available, but that issue will come up a little bit later in the process today. So I hope that provides some clarity there, Mr. President.
Thank you. Saying that you've not spent any time on that. That does not count. So anyone else? I'm going to make a point of clarification, and I'm going to make some statements of fact, not doing this to upset anybody. My first is an apology to the body. I'm sorry it's got to this point, and this is the way it happened. And I'm very sorry. This body elected me, gave me faith, and I will be honest with you. I feel like this is a vote of no confidence in what I've done, and I'm sorry. With that being said, this is not about Chairman Nethercott, and this is not about Vice President Kinski. What you're voting on, folks, is in honesty, you're going to change chairman. You're going to fix a wrong that I did. At least that's what this vote is fixing a wrong that the president did. I take ownership of that. And by fixing it, you're going to create another one. You're going to do exactly what I did to Senator Nethercott. I think that's entirely appropriate if she'd have done a poor job of running the committee. By all accounts, she did a stellar job of chairing the committee. The next part I will tell you, she never asked for this job. I got on my hands and knees and begged her to take it. She did not want it. She liked appropriations or judiciary chair. She did not want it. I begged her. She did it at my request. I'm sitting here, I'm a little cracked because I'm about to really hurt somebody's life because of the decision I made. Sorry. So that being said, I will tell you that this didn't happen in a vacuum. How this started. I will start at the very start because this was controversy and you folks know about it. I drove to Sheridan before I appointed to chairman. Met with Senator Beitman, Senator Kinski on the same day. I told them both the same thing. I wasn't positive exactly how it would work. And I wanted them to give me their word. If things went south and I asked them, they would resign their position. You can call that upfront good, bad. It caused controversy. It became public. The fact is it happened. And Dave and I looked at each other in the eye, Senator Kinski, Vice President Kinski, and he gave me his word. Now I will go forward to what happened during the session. Shortly into the start of the session on the appropriations, 4 of the members of the committee walked in my office and said there was virtually no communication between Chairman Kinski and themselves. They were left out of communications and they would like to have me help them make the committee functional. They felt like it was unfunctional. Any of the committee can stand up and correct me if I'm wrong on this. I proceeded to bring in Majority Floor Leader Hicks and Chairman Kinski, and we visited about what needed to happen. And I think you all know what kind of leader I am because you've seen part of it in public in the past. And I said, you have to work with your committee. Was assured it would happen. Within 2 or 3 days, it had happened again. Majority Floor Leader Hicks, Chairman Kinski and I, and again, he made it very clear, had to do it. His request to me, do not talk to my committee. Don't have any communications. I think those of you that were here know that I didn't have any for about close to a week period. Continued to go on. I was left in a dilemma. At the end of the day, a huge part of the responsibility and whether the budget works or works right falls on this desk. And I will tell you with all you, the buck stops here. That's just vote, the argument we're having today. It's about me. And I'm not saying I want it of me. I'm who caused it and I'm the one that's responsible at the end of the day. I accept that. That being said, I had to leave session for a business trip and I brought in Senator Kinski, Chairman Kinski, and Senator Hicks. And we could not complete a conversation because of a shouting match and me being called whatever. I won't personalize it, but it did not go well. We got finished through the session and I got more calls. So I contacted the chairman and I drove to Sheridan. At what point he told me that he had a plumbing leak and could not meet. This was in the morning. That was after I'd driven there. Said, I'll wait. Got put off. Ultimately, my wife and I spent the night in Sheridan. Ate breakfast, got a hold of him in the morning. Said, we'll be there. He said, my wife has COVID. Said, we can talk over the fence, we can do whatever. Declined to do so. And we went to Billings to the horse sale. And as I sat through it, I called Senator Kinski before I left Billings and he didn't answer the phone. And I informed him that I was going to follow through and remove him as chairman. I also was clear I was not going to remove him from the committee. I just was going to change chairman. I'm a man of my word. That was what I did. It's how it happened. I then went through the reservation going home where there's no cell service. By the time I got home, I would have rather expected we were going to sit down and have a heated conversation either over the phone or in person. What I had was a dozen voicemails from the press that he had gone to one of the leading publications and gone after. And those are just flat statement of facts. I ask you to look inwardly. I asked the chairman yesterday, Mr. Vice President. It's the first time in 10 months we've talked. I have repeatedly tried to reach out to him to have face-to-face meetings or visit. I've been declined. Reached out, said, what will you do different than is presently happening? Committee's been functioning fairly well. What will you do differently? And I'm sure he's going to get up and tell you, but I did not get anything that I heard that was going to change anything. All we were going to do is restore a title. The committee's not changing, folks. He also assured me that he would work with the committee. And I said, let's bring him in and talk before we go to this meeting today. He declined. So the meeting we had was Senator Hicks, Vice President Kinski, Chairman Nethercott, and myself. And I can tell you, I don't want to speak, but they both said they would like to be the chairman. That puts me in a bad place. There's going to be a loser either way. I'm asking you to look inwardly, do what's right for the state of Wyoming and the Wyoming legislature. And I will tell you, you have a functioning appropriations committee that by all accounts ran more on time than it has in a decade, produced a budget that was fairly well done. It was done with Vice President Kinski on the committee having full ability to influence the budget in any way he chose, bring things up to a vote. And I challenge all of you to look inward and tell me what will happen, or Senator Kinski can get up and address it. What will be better for the state of Wyoming and our state budget and our relations with the other side and the people of the state by changing chairman again and leaving the committee exactly the way it is? You've got to keep in mind it's still going to be the same committee. So with that, probably the last thing I will tell you, after I did it, it was statewide news. I would like to tell you how many complaints I got out of this body. It's absolutely incredible. One, the person that just brought the appeal. No one called me and said, you screwed up, you blew it. Obviously, they felt that. I didn't get any. And I took the action. It was portrayed that it was a knee-jerk reaction after consultation with several past governors, a half dozen appropriations chairs in the past from different people, past president of the Senate. And every single one of them told me, if you have a non-functional committee, you're obligated to take action. They all told me that. And that was why I did that. I then went to our LSO staff, and do not involve them in this other than the fact that I said, where am I at legally and what can I legally do? I have the opinion letters. We made them available to the person that appealed. The letters were very clear that it was a gray area, but it was very clear that I could do it as long as I did not remove from the committee. I intentionally left Senator Kinski on it. Didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I did make it very clear through the press, because that's how he and I were communicating at the time, that I had no intention of trying to remove him from the committee, and I thought he was an effective member of the committee and could continue to be so. So with that, I don't want to cause any hate and discontent, but I feel very compelled to put facts out there, and there are facts. I'm willing to have them challenged. I can back every single statement I just made up to you. My apologies to you. Bottom of my heart, I still made the right decision, folks. And think about where we go if it doesn't work going forward, because you now have a president of the Senate that has no ability to say anything about appropriations, because you've effectively told me that I don't make good decisions as far as what goes on that committee, and we have a personality problem between myself and the chairman. So you really need to think about that, because it's on all of us. If this thing doesn't run correctly going forward, it's not just me at this point, it's all of us that vote on this. I ask for your support. I openly ask for you to maintain the stability, and I will tell you, in my opinion, very strongly, this body is much more stable going forward, leaving it as is. And you come after me and you do whatever you want. You've got the ability with 50% to do all kinds of things to me. And if you feel that way, please do it. But please don't punish someone that I put on there so that you can feel like you're right or wrong and actually did nothing. Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, we're in new ground here, I think, a little bit. And I'm compelled to come back and think about the business of the state of Wyoming. The fact that we have a budget that has been prepared by a committee under the leadership of one of our members, ably prepared by all accounts. And we're on the eve of an unprecedented time of having the budget be introduced, the earliest I've ever seen it introduced in the legislature. That budget will be defended on this floor beginning this week. I come down to the practicality that it makes no sense to change the leadership of that budget at this time. And it's more critical because of the fact we don't have the opportunity anymore when the budgets used to be in one house and then the other house. They're mere budgets. What happens here is frontline with what happens in the other house. There's now a practice run in the other house. It's critical that we get the budget right. And perhaps it was any committee, but the budget committee in a budget year where we have a mirror process that is very rapid and begins in 2 more days, 3 more days, I guess. I appeal to the body to think about Wyoming stability. And I am perfectly happy if we want to make a change, we make it after the session. Absolutely. But the practicality of sticking with the budget that has been prepared under the leadership of the current chairman has got to ring true to the work that we need to do. No disrespect to anyone involved. I love it when people find their souls all the way around the room. But this is the Wyoming Senate. We have extremely high history and standards. We love each other. We fight like children. And we make mistakes. Well, when it comes right down to it, we have to get the work done, Mr. President. This is the budget session. It has begun. Let's get the work done.
Mr. President, thank you. And I've been around a while now. It's been the great honor of my life to serve in here with all of you. No question about it. Such a privilege. Grateful for all those who helped me to do it. Some of them are sitting right up here. So I feel compelled to at least share a handful of thoughts. I've learned here these last few months that most often we stand on the floor and votes are already decided. So be that as it may, I just want to bring us back to what we're doing here. I've served as a chairman for many years. Again, a great privilege, and I've served under several different presidents. At no time, Mr. President, did I ever feel like you didn't have the right to tell me that I wasn't going to be the chair anymore, either through inaction or belligerence or just plain incompetence. I knew darn well that you could call me at a moment's notice and say, you're just not going to be the chair anymore because you're not getting the work done. I especially knew that a couple of presidents ago, one of the great friends I've ever made down here, but it was made very clear by that president that you're not going to bring that legislation in front of your committee or you're not going to be the chairman anymore. I said, absolutely. I understand, Mr. President, so that piece of legislation is not going to be considered by my committee. So let's set that aside and just say, okay, let's take ourselves through this vote on a motion which is going to set a precedence in here that we haven't ever set before. We haven't ever, in all of my years, taken a vote to override the presiding officer, a president that we elect who has the opportunity, and frankly, we've asked them to seat a leadership team, chairman of that person's choosing. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to say, at any moment's notice, we can take a vote, override the president and say, we don't want that senator to be the chairman. We want somebody else to be the chairman. If we really want to do that, I just want to caution those who want to be president going forward. I'm sure we have a few. I hope many of you get to do that. If we're really going to do that, Mr. President, just rest assured that this kind of action will happen again. And I just want to caution you, just in the name of professionalism and in the name of this body and this institution, which my good friend at the back of the room just said is a higher calling, I would respectfully, with respect to the senator in the back, respectfully ask that this motion be withdrawn. Thank you.
We're talking about precedents. This is the first time I know of that a precedent's ever been challenged as far as decision on the floor, ever. But there has been a chairman removed before, taken off committee, and I'm thinking maybe the vice president ought to know about it. This was a time when a guy named Demetriou was leading the body. And there was a future governor named Jim Geringer. And they got crosswise. Jim Geringer got removed. And it was a man that's a legacy politician from Wyoming that's an incredible individual that was tougher than nails. His name was Tom Kennison from Sheridan. This has happened before. This is not brand new. And I can tell you, I know of times it didn't have to come to this because it was what the good senator told me is when the president asked him to step down, they did. And in this case, I am going to tell you one more time. Man to man, I was given his word and his honor that he would resign if I didn't like what was happening. That was controversial as heck. I also have in my possession a letter that is signed. It says I resigned from the committee, not as chairman, but I resigned from the committee. You did not see me bring that letter and hand it out. I don't intend to. I think he is a good member of the committee. And I hope he doesn't take it personal, because the only part I have is a man's bond, is his word is his bond. When I shake somebody's hand and tell them I'm going to do it, I would suggest you ask Senator Larson what my word's like when I tell him I'm going to do something. I mean it. Look people in the eye and do it. And I'm asking the good vice president to do the same thing. Honor his word. Thank you.
Mr. President, as one of the members of that committee, I'd like to relay to the body that we worked hard over the last 2 months, 2 weeks in December, 2 weeks in January, working with the House to try to come up with a budget that everyone could understand and be favorable to. What I saw from our chairman during that time was a lot of cooperation with the committee. She worked well with all of us on the committee, and informed us, kept us informed, had meetings with us to tell us what was going on. She worked with the House in a similar manner and kept them informed of what we wanted to do, and we were informed of what they were doing, which was unusual for that committee. We also cooperated with the president and the speaker of the House to make sure they knew what we were doing and how it was going. And that has been a smooth transition. And I'm saying it would probably be smooth with anybody as the chair, but Senator Nethercott did an incredible job of making that a smooth operation. We're now about to present that to you. I think you heard from one other senator that it'd be a bad time to change direction on the leadership of that committee. Maybe after we've presented, it'd be a better time to do that. But right now, we need all the horsepower we can to present this budget to you and then cooperate and get it done with the House. So I ask you to also consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, I think just as the majority floor asked the last time, there was a motion to clarify what a vote of aye and a vote of no is on this motion, since the motion was stated quite a while ago. So I want to be clear that what we're objecting to, I think, is your assignment, but I want that to be clear for the body and for myself. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. So the question on the floor is, should the decision of the president be sustained or overturned as to the change of chairmanship of Senate Appropriations? An aye vote sustains the decision of the president. A no vote overturns the decision of the president. Chief Clerk will call the roll. Senator Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Just for clarification again, I want to make sure, because that's not exact the way I understood the motion. The motion aye would be to overturn the decision of the president. Is that not correct?
It's not correct.
All right. Would you please state that again?
I just did it. So
We don't
an
have
aye
to-
vote sustains the decision of the president. A no vote is to overturn the decision of the president.
Mr. President,
Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
what I would do is, because I think there is some confusion here in the body, is just as I'm sitting back here watching. So I just want to make sure, because this is extremely important, folks, that we get it right.
So I'm reading out of Mason's. This is directly out of Mason's, folks.
So just people, if you don't know, please stand up and ask for further clarification. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll read you out of Mason's, the section, and then we'll go one more time. This is on section 244 in Mason's number 3. When voting on an appeal, although the question is, shall the ruling of the president or the speaker or chair stand as judgment of the Senate or House committee, the presiding officer, who is a member, may vote. And a tie vote, even though the presiding officer's vote made it a tie, sustains the presiding officer upon the principle of that ruling of the presiding officer can be reversed by only a majority. So it's back to where it falls. And I vote Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's come to my attention that since we've debated for a while, maybe I should reread the motion and then we can make sure we have it exactly right. Would that be okay with you.
So it's actually not a motion, it's appeal, and appeal automatically goes in. That's why I have a script.
Okay.
So you've registered your appeal, duly taken.
Okay,
And from there, we go right to Mason's, and I'll read it one more time for.
Okay.
Because this is following actual rules.
and then explain it in layman's terms one more time, please.
So out of Mason's, starts, this appeal is in order in accordance with Mason's chapter 23, sections 240, 245, motions debatable. Senate Rule 8-6 established decision of the president can be appealed and overturned by a majority of the members present. So when you go back to that, it goes back, and this is the language. An aye vote sustains the decision of the president. A no vote is to overturn the decision of the president. My decision was to remove Senator Kinsky and put in Senator Nethercott. So an aye vote means that you agree with what the action I made. A no vote says you disagree with it.
Thank you.
Further questions? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Roll call on the appeal. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Murphy? Aye. Garoop? Aye. Hicks?
No.
No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinsky? No. Cole? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz?
No,
No. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. 14 aye, 17 no.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Welcome back, Chairman Kinsky. Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Mr. President, I would move that the Senate stand in recess until 2:20 or 3:20. We take a 10-minute break here.
Thank
We
you.
get back to the business of the Senate.
Stand at ease to the sound of the
Stand at-
gavel, 3:20. Senator Nethercott, you have something? Senator Nethercott.
Mr. President, thank you. My good and gracious senators, thank you for today and thank you for this morning. I think I've had the opportunity to speak with most of you after that very difficult vote. I am genuinely sorry that you had to take it and we were all placed in that situation. That is deeply regrettable. I am confident that we all will move forward with our history behind us and continuing to lead for the reputation of the Senate. I applaud Chairman Kinski, Vice Chairman Kinski, and his leadership of the budget moving forward. I'd like to remind us all of our constitutional obligation to pass a budget. I am confident that the budget that's been worked on so much is in a place where he will be able to shepherd it through. So I look forward to your continued cooperation, and I thank you, and rest assured, I respect and appreciate all of you moving forward. And again, I'm sincerely sorry we had to go through that, but we are the Senate and we will move forward.
You're here.
Oh, all of it.
No, they'll have to turn them on.
Thank you, Mr. President. In similar vein, I want everybody to know that when the president and I met yesterday, I assured him that no matter what happened, that everybody on this committee would work together collegially and professionally to move forward, win, lose, or draw, that we would deliver a budget for the state of Wyoming, a budget of which the Senate and the legislature could be proud. I too regret the situation. When Senator Nethercott ran for a statewide office, my wife and I were proud to host a fundraiser for her at our home and send out mailers and do everything we could to help her in that election. So we were friends then, and I trust that we will remain friends for a long time to come. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have privilege of the floor? Switching gears and getting back to work, I wanted to recognize as you know, we have 2 tribal liaisons in the state of Wyoming. They're housed within the governor's office. We've had some vacancies, but I'm very proud to say that we have Anita Roman, who is the Northern Arapahoe's tribal liaison in the gallery. And before we applaud, her counterpart for the Eastern Shoshone is a guy named James Sorrells. He's actually watching the House floor, so they think they're tag teaming a little bit. But when James is on this side of the chamber, we'll welcome him. But at this time, let's welcome Anita. We appreciate your attendance here.
Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Mr. President, are we at that order of business? Mr. President, I move the following named persons be placed in nomination as new employees of the Senate and that they be voted on collectively. Will the reading clerk please read the names of the new employees in their respective positions?
Judy Edenman, in a change of position, Leadership Secretary. Marilyn Moore, Watch Person. Rand True, Student Page. Sylvia McClure, Student Page.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. On behalf of the entire Senate, I welcome you as staff members to the budget session. I hope you find your work here challenging and rewarding. A lot of your old friends, and I'd personally like to thank all of you. This is outside of the script for all you've done through the years for all of us. Thank you, Ellen, and all the rest. Good to hear your voice again, Randy. We're at that order of business, amending and adoption of the rules. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a proposed amendment?
Mr. President, I do have a proposed amendment.
The reader, please read in the amendment.
Senate Rule 0001, Senate Rules.
Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Mr. President, I move Amendment 0 SR1 to be adopted. This is an amendment to be consideration as an amendment to Senate Rule 2-2, 2-6, and 2-8. So remember, in your red folder, you should have on your desk, you should have a copy of the proposed amendment to those rules. And while you're getting those out, let me explain what the amendment would do. So members of the body, I think having the discussion that we've had earlier today, a lot of this revolves around our rules. When a number of people, reasonable people, members of the Senate can read the same rule and come up with a different interpretation of what that rule is, by the very definition, we cannot agree as to what the rule does, that it's ambiguous. And so, Mr. President, what I've tried to do is craft a rule that's not ambiguous. And what the rule does is to go in and it says under 2-2, duties of the president. Under subsection E, it would amend that section and say, this is the section that says the name and members of all committees, the new language, and committee chairman, unless otherwise directed by the Senate. Amends that provision. So this brings in the issue of committee chairman. 2-6, Senate committees, Senate standing committees, and Senate standing committee chairman shall be appointed by the president after conferring with the majority and minority floor leaders. Section 2-8 in our rules, changes in committee membership. Once the Senate standing committee membership and the Senate committee chairmanship have been established by the president pursuant to 2-2, no changes shall be made to that committee membership or chairmanship except by a vote of the members of the Senate. Mr. President, it's a debatable, we can discuss it, but all I'm trying to do is clear up any ambiguity in exactly what the roles and responsibility of both the Senate and the president does when it comes to both committees and committee chairman. With that, Mr. President, I'd stand for any questions. If there's no questions, I'd ask for favorable adoption of the proposed amendment to the rule.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is a question I bring sincerely. We're a citizen legislature, and I think that there is, in my mind, a very real circumstance where you might take on a chairmanship of a standing committee, and then maybe your personal life circumstances change. Maybe you've got a promotion at work that requires more or family obligations. So if you wanted to step down as the chairman of the committee, knowing that you wanted, but didn't want to leave the committee entirely or retire from the legislature, you just maybe aren't a good fit for the chairmanship or don't have the ability to provide the time commitment, how would that work? And so I think that's a very real thing that could be happening.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I don't know whether I'm for or against this. I think there's issues on both sides, but I do appreciate the consideration by the good senator from here in Laramie County, raising some concerns about how it fits in with the rest. There is clear language about filling vacancies with regard to membership on Senate standing committees, and it's actually in the second half of 2-8 there. That is not amended here, and there's no way to amend this on the fly. This process does not allow us to fix anything. Ordinarily, recommended rules would go through the Rules Committee for precisely this reason, so that they can be negotiated, chatted through, and you can contemplate whether the language is appropriate or not. So, Mr. President, I don't know honestly whether I'm for or against this policy, as I said when I started, but I do think that it would benefit from going through the Rules Committee process to have a little bit of a hearing, hear from members of the Senate that want to testify for or against this bill, as well as anybody that would want to bring an amendment to the language. That would be my recommendation, and I won't make the motion at this time, but I think I will make a motion in a little bit to refer it to the Rules Committee. But I'd be interested in hearing what the chamber thinks prior to making that motion, so I won't do it now.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President. Seeing nobody else, frankly, I think a motion to send it to the Rules Committee is a good idea. I think the circumstance that was alluded to is a very real possibility. I don't think this quite accommodates that. I think it needs a little wordsmithing and sending it to the Rules Committee for that purpose, I think would be a very good idea.
Mayor Barlow, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, just to clarify that if this rule were to be voted on today, or if it goes to Rules Committee and comes out, it would require a 2/3 vote to actually amend the rules. Whereas when we adopted these rules, it was a majority vote. I just want to confirm that that is in fact.
That's true.
Thank you, Mr. President. So a 2/3 vote to
That's right.
to change the rules as they are. Thank you.
Further, Senator Hicks, further? Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to refer proposed rule SR1 to the Rules Committee for further consideration.
Thank you. Without objection, so ordered, we'll go to my office. We'll stand at ease. We can do it later?
Point of order.
Senator Rothfuss.
Yeah, I don't see a rush, and I guess I'd ask the bringer. I don't see a rush, so we could just schedule a meeting, have a public meeting as we typically do for rules. And then
That's what we'll do.
walk
Thank
through
you.
it. So, and I did call for a motion, so it needs to be a voice vote.
Senator Hicks.
So, Mr. President, I would concur with the minority floor leader, and this gets to the very issue of our rules. Is if we're gonna amend our rules, takes 2/3 vote. But it's very important that we erase any ambiguity, or if we can see any unforeseen circumstances associated with the change of a rule or amending a rule. We need to probably take this to the Rules Committee and then bring out a recommendation to the entire body. It's a debatable when we bring the rule back out and recommendations. That Rule Committee will make a recommendations back to you. You can overrule, you can overrule the Rules Committee or stuff, but I think it is a good process to adhere to send this rule to the Rules Committee. So I would support the motion by the minority floor leader.
We do that with a voice vote, Ellen, or just? All in favor of the motion, which is to send this to Rules Committee, which will be a later date, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. We'll go to rules at a later date. Next order of business, introduction of Senate files, and the race begins. Got his on, not mine, sorry. Larry didn't have script. You want to run it back to him and he can just bring it back. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, before we get started, would there be a possibility for a quick privilege of the floor?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. Fellow senators, I want to take a moment to introduce some special students from our 8 community colleges who are up in the balcony. These are recipients of the 2023 Shaping Wyoming's Future Student Awards. One student was selected from each college to highlight their story of determination and success. They will be recognized this evening at the Wyoming Business Alliance reception. for how they have transformed their lives through their experience with the Wyoming Community College system and how their efforts are shaping the future of Wyoming. Please help me welcome senators, and let's save our applause till the end. If I could ask them to stand up as I introduce them. Dash Lloyd from Casper College in the nursing program. Right up above us here, Brian Roanhorse, Central Wyoming College, studying film. Carly Keller, Eastern Wyoming College, veterinary technology. Naya Parker, Gillette College, criminal justice. Lily Navarro, Laramie County Community College, Bachelor of Applied Science and Applied Management. Jacob Wells, Northwest College, criminal justice. Landry May, Sheridan College in agriculture. And Dalton Stoddard, Western Wyoming Community College in nursing. Mr. President and senators, would you please welcome all these students to the Senate?
Here. So, okay, he's back. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, in accordance with Senate Rule 13-5, I move that there be an interim committee bill consent list. Mr. President.
You have it. Sorry.
Mr. President, in accordance with Senate Rule 13-5, I move that there be an interim committee bill consent list, which consists of the bills to be read by the reading clerk, if we could have those read at this time.
Senate Consent List A. The following three bills are sponsored by the Agriculture Committee. Senate File 12, Meat Processing Plants, Hides and Carcasses. Senate File 13, Federal Land Use Plans, Legal Actions Authorized. Senate File 14, State Fair Board Powers and Responsibilities. The following two bills are sponsored by the Water Committee. Senate File 65, Temporary Water Use Agreements Amendments. Senate File 66, Water Exchange Amendments. Senate File 2, Legislative Budget, sponsored by Management Council. The following seven bills are sponsored by the Appropriations Committee. Senate File 47, Law Enforcement Retirement Contributions. Senate File 48, Patrol, Warden, and Investigator Retirement Contributions. Senate File 49, Judicial Retirement Program Contributions. Senate File 58, Investment of State Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. Senate File 59, Federal Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund Adjustment. Senate File 67, Public Employee Retirement Plan Contributions. Senate File 71, Salaries and Allowances for Judges Amendments. The following 8 bills are sponsored by the Corporations Committee. Senate File 20, Electricity Rates for Costs that Do Not Benefit Wyoming. Senate File 21, Public Utilities Net Power Cost Sharing Ratio. Senate File 22, Public Service Commission Electricity Reliability. Senate File 23, Public Utilities Energy Resource Procurement. Senate File 24, Public Service Commission Integrated Resource Plans. Senate File 25, Reclamation and Decommissioning Costs. Senate File 26, Special District Vacancies. Senate File 27, Special Districts Bond Elections Exception. The following 3 bills are sponsored by the Revenue Committee. Senate File 54, Homeowner Tax Exemption. Senate File 55, Board of Equalization, Questions Before the Board. Senate File 56, Special Districts Limit on Tax Levy. And Senate File 40, Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Trust Fund Administration, sponsored by the Travel Committee.
So I'm going to ask for removal, but I'm going to do a little explanation first. If you're actually going to go through the consent list and vote no, I'd encourage you to have the bill pulled. And Chairman, you might want to do it if you think that they're not understood. We have killed bills without any debate. Nobody's looked at anything other than glance at the bill. So I really encourage you. This is serious business because we aren't doing introduction talk. So for you, Chairman, or any of you that have a bill that matters to you, if you think it might just get pulled off and be voted no on, I'd ask you to get up and explain the bill. And with that, would anybody like anything removed from the consent list? Going once, going twice. So, first reading of the bills, Senate File 12, meat processing plants, hides and carcasses. Senate File 13, federal land use plans, legal actions authorized. Senate File 14, State Fair Board powers and responsibilities. Senate File 65, temporary water use agreements and amendments. Senate File 66, water exchange amendments. Senate File 2, legislative budget. Senate File 47, law enforcement retirement contributions. Senate File 48, patrol warden and investigator retirement contributions. Senate File 49, judicial retirement program contributions. Senate File 58, investment of state unemployment insurance trust fund. Senate File 59, federal unemployment compensation trust fund adjustment. Senate File 67, public employee retirement plan contributions. Senate File 71, salaries and allowance for judges amendments. Senate File 20, electricity rates for costs that do not benefit Wyoming. Senate File 21, public utilities net power cost sharing ratio. Senate File 22, Public Service Commission electricity reliability. Senate File 23, public utilities energy resource procurement. Senate File 24, Public Service Commission integrated resource plans. Senate File 25, reclamation and decommissioning costs. Senate File 26, special district vacancies. Senate File 27, special district bond elections exception. Senate File 54, homeowner tax exemption. Senate File 55, Board of Equalization, questions before the board. Senate File 56, special districts, limit on tax levy. Senate File 40, outdoor recreation and tourism trust fund administration. The chief clerk will call the roll. Requires a 2/3 vote for introduction.
On the consent list, Anderson, Baldwin, Barlow, Whitman, Boner, Bouchard, Brennan, Case, Hooper, Dockstetter, Ellis, French, Murphy, Baru, Hicks, Hutchings, Ide, Jones, Kinsky, Kolb, Landon, Larson, McEwen, Nethercott, Pappas, Rothfuss, Salazar, Schuler, Scott, Steinmetz, President Driscoll.
Aye.
On the consent list, 31 aye. Senate File 12. Are there any changes? Hooper, aye to no. Case, aye to no. Anderson, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 12, 28 aye, 3 no. Senate File 13, are there any changes? Cooper, aye to no. Guru, aye to no. Nethercott, aye to no. Barlow, aye to no. Case, aye to no. Anderson, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 13, 25 aye, 6 no. Senate File 14, are there any changes? Cooper, aye to no. Closing vote. Anderson, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 14, 29 aye, 2 no. Senate File 65, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 65, 31 aye. Senate File 66, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 66, 31 aye. Senate File 2, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 2, 31 aye. Senate File 47, are there any changes? Larson? Aye to no. Excuse me, aye. Aye to no. Beitman, aye to no. Nethercott, aye to no. Case, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. Hutchins, aye to no. French, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 47, 23 aye, 8 no. Senate File 48, are there any changes? Aye. Aye to no. Larson? Aye to no. Beitman, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. Closing. Hutchins, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 48, 26 aye, 5 no. Senate File 49, are there any changes? Aye. Aye to no. Larson? Aye to no. McEwen? Aye to no. Hutchings, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 49, 27 aye, 4 no. Senate File 58, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 58, 31 aye. Senate File 59, are there any changes? Hutchings, aye to no. Aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. Larson, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 59, 27 aye, 4 no. Senate File 67, are there any changes? Aye. Aye to no. Beitman, aye to no. Hutchings, aye to no. Larson, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. French, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 67, 25 aye, 6 no. Senate File 71, are there any changes? Hicks, aye to no. Aye. Aye to no. Larson, aye to no. Cole, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. Hutchings, aye to no. French, aye to no. Kinsky, aye to no. Bouchard, aye to no. And Salazar, aye to no. And Steinmetz, aye to no. Dockstader, aye to no. Beitman, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 71, 18 aye, 13 no. Senate File 20, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 20, 31 aye. Senate File 21, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 21, 31 aye. Senate File 22, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 2231I. Senate File 23, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 2331I. Senate File 24, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 2431I. Senate File 25, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 2531I. Senate File 26, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 2631I. Senate File 27, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 2731I. Senate File 54, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 5431I. Senate File 55, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 5531I. Senate File 56, are there any changes? Hicks? I to know. Barlow, I to know. Cooper? I to know. Pappas? I to know. Anderson? I to know. Steinmetz? I to know. Kinsky? I to know. Schuler? I to know. I to know. Baldwin? I to know. Dockstetter? I to know. Salazar? I to know. Brennan? I to know. Larson? I to know. Landon? I to know. And Cole? I to know. Boner? I to know. And
Driscoll.
Nethercott?
Oh, sorry.
I to know. Driscoll?
I didn't know.
I to know. Hutchings? I to know. French? I to know. McEwen, I to know. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 56, 9 aye, 22 no. And Senate File 40, are there any changes? Case I to know, Larson. I to know. I to know, Beitman. I to know, Hutchings. I to know, Steinmetz. I to know, McEwen. I to know, Cole. I to know, French. I to know, Kinsky. I to know, Salazar. No. Bouchard. I to know. Brennan. I to know. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 40, 18 aye, 13 no.
Following bills having received the required approval of 2/3 of elected members. Senate File 12 to committee number 5, agriculture. Senate File 13, federal land use plans, legal actions authorized to committee number 5, agriculture. Senate File 14, State Fair Board powers and responsibilities to committee number 5, agriculture. Senate File 65, temporary water use agreements and amendments to committee number 5, agriculture. Senate File 66, water exchange amendments to committee number 5, water. Senate File 2, legislative budget to committee number 2, appropriations. Senate File 47, law enforcement retirement contributions to committee number 2, appropriations. Senate File 48, patrol warden and investigator retirement contributions to committee number 2, appropriations. Senate File 49, judicial retirement program contributions to committee number 2, appropriations. Senate File 58, investment of state unemployment insurance trust fund to committee number 2, appropriations. Senate File 59, federal unemployment compensation trust fund adjustment to committee number 2, appropriations. Senate File 67, public employee retirement plan contributions to committee number 2, appropriations. Senate File 20, electricity rates for costs that do not benefit Wyoming to committee number 7, corporations. Senate File 21, public utilities net power cost sharing ratio, committee number 7, corporations. Senate File 22, public service commission, electricity reliability, committee number 7, corporations. Senate File 23, public utilities, any energy resource procurement, committee number 7, corporations. Senate File 24, public service commission, integrated resource plans, committee number 7, corporations. Senate File 25, reclamation and decommissioning costs, committee number 7, corporations. Senate File 26, special district vacancies, committee number 7, corporations. Senate File 27, special district bond elections exemption, committee number 7, corporations. Senate File 54, homeowner tax exemption, committee number 3, revenue. Senate File 55, Board of Equalization, questions before the board, committee number 3, revenue. The following bills, Senate File 71, salaries and allowances for judges amendments. Senate File 56, Special Districts, Limit on Tax Levy, and Senate File 40, Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Trust Fund Administration, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, have failed introduction. We're now on to consent list B. So if you look at your pile, consent list B. The reading clerk, please read the bills.
Senate Day 1 Consent List B. The following 7 bills are sponsored by the Judiciary Committee. Senate File 30, Influencing Jurors and Witnesses, Judges Amendment. Senate File 31, Sex Offender Registration, Promoting Obscenity. Senate File 32, Camp Limitations on Psychoactive Substances. Senate File 33, Wyoming Rural Attorney Recruitment Program. Senate File 34, Sex Offender Registration, Registerable Offenses. Senate File 35, Public Records DOC Investigations. Senate File 36, Uniform Child Abduction Prevention Act. The following 2 bills are sponsored by the Education Committee. Senate File 9, Parental Rights in Education 1. Senate File 19, Developmental Preschool Funding. The following 7 bills are sponsored by the Labor Committee. Senate File 3, State Employee Leave for Volunteer Fire or Volunteer EMS. Senate File 4, Rehiring Retired Firefighters, Continued Retirement Benefits. Senate File 5, Organ Transplant Recipient Protection. Senate File 6, Nursing Home Administrators, Temporary Licenses. Senate File 7, Behavioral Health Redesign, Vulnerable Adults. Senate File 8, Health Insurance for Volunteer Emergency Responders. Senate File 39, Firefighters Recruitment Film. The following 5 bills are sponsored by the Minerals Committee. Senate File 41, Banking Division, Classification and Salary Exemptions. Senate File 42, Low Carbon Reliable Energy Standards Amendments. Senate File 43, Pore Space, Severances and Separate Conveyances Prohibited. Senate File 44, Limited Mining Operations Amendments. Senate File 78, Carbon Dioxide Enhanced Oil Recovery Stimulus. The following 3 bills were sponsored by the Blockchain Technology Committee. Senate File 50, Unincorporated Nonprofit DAOs. Senate File 51, Unlawful Dissemination of Misleading Synthetic Media. Senate File 52, Wyoming Stable Token Act Amendments. The following 3 bills were sponsored by the Transportation Committee. Senate File 15, Acceptance of Retrocession Federal Military Installations. Senate File 16, Military Department Emergency Fire Suppression Accounts. And Senate File 17, Plane Coordinate System Amendments.
Thank you. Would anybody like any of the bills removed from consent list? Thank you. First reading of the bills. Senate File 30, Influencing Jurors and Witness Judges Amendment. Senate File 31, Sex Offender Registry Registration Promoting Obscenity. Senate File 32, Hemp Limitations on Psychoactive Substances. Senate File 33, Wyoming Rural Attorney Recruitment Program. Senate File 34, Sex Offender Registration, Registerable Offenses. Senate File 35, Public Records DOC Investigations. Senate File 36, Uniform Child Abduction Prevention Act. Senate File 9, Parental Rights in Education 1. Senate File 19, Developmental Preschool Funding. Senate File 3, State Employees Leave for Volunteer Firefighter or Volunteer EMS. Senate File 4, Rehiring Retired Firefighters Continued Retirement Benefits. Senate File 5, Organ Transplant Recipient Protection. Senate File 6, Nursing Home Administrators Temporary Licenses. Senate File 7, Behavioral Health Redesign Vulnerable Adults. Senate File 8, Health Insurance for Volunteer Emergency Responders. Senate File 39, Firefighters Recruitment Film. Senate File 41, Banking Division Clarification and Salary Exemptions. Senate File 42, Low Carbon Reliable Energy Standards Amendments. Senate File 43, Pore Space Severances and Separate Conveyances Prohibited. Senate File 44, Limited Mining Operations Amendments. Senate File 78, Carbon Dioxide Enhanced Oil Recovery Stimulus. Senate File 50, Unincorporated Nonprofit DAOs. Senate File 51, Unlawful Dissemination of Misleading Synthetic Media. Senate File 52, Wyoming Stable Token Act Amendments. Senate File 15, Exceptions of Retrocession Federal Military Installations. Senate File 16, Military Department Emergency Fire Suppression Account. Senate File 17, Plane Coordinate System Amendments. The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Anderson. Baldwin. Barlow. Whitman. Boner. Bouchard. Brennan. Case. Cooper. Dockstetter. Ellis. French. Murphy. Guru. Hicks. Hutchings. Ide. Jones. Kinsky. Kolb. Landon. Larson. McEwen. Nethercott. Pappas. Rothbus. Salazar. Schuler. Scott. Steinmetz. President Driscoll.
Aye.
On the consent list, 31 aye. Senate File 30, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 30, 31 aye. Senate File 31. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 31, 31 aye. Senate File 32, are there any changes? Case aye to no. Ide. Aye to no. Beitman, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 32, 28 aye, 3 no. Senate File 33, are there any changes? Hicks? Hicks, aye to no. Case? Case, aye to no. Aye to no. Bouchard, aye to no. McEwen? Aye to no. Hutchings? Aye to no. French? Aye to no. Steinmetz? Aye to no. Ide? Aye to no. Kolb? Aye to no. Jones? Aye to no. Salazar? Aye to no. Beitman? Aye to no. Scott? Scott, no. Larson? No. Close. Dockstetter, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 33, 16 aye, 15 no. Senate File 34. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 34, 31I. Senate File 35, are there any changes? Case, I to know. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 35, 30 aye, 1 no. Senate File 36, are there any changes? Aye. Aye to no. Whitman, aye to no. Larson, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 36, 27 aye, 4 no. Senate File 9, are there any changes? Rothfuss, aye to no. Guru, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 9, 29 aye, 2 no. Senate File 19, are there any changes? Aye. Aye to no. Hutchings, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 19, 29 aye, 2 no. Senate File 3, are there any changes? Larson? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 3, 30 aye, 1 no. Senate File 4, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 4, 31 aye. Senate File 5, are there any changes? Whitman, no. Case? No. Aye. No. Salazar? Aye to no. McEwen? Aye to no. Larson? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 5, 25 aye, 6 no. Senate File 6, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 6, 31 aye. Senate File 7, are there any changes? Aye. Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 7, 30 aye, 1 no. Senate File 8, are there any changes? Aye. Aye to no. Case. Aye to no. McEwen. Aye to no. Larson. Aye to no. Whitman, no. French, no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 8, 25 aye, 6 no. Senate File 39, are there any changes? Hicks, aye to no. Hutchings, aye to no. Aye to no. Cole, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. French, aye to no. Bouchard, no. Larson, no. Beitman, no. Salazar, no. Steinmetz, no. Kinsky, no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 39, 19 aye, 12 no. Senate File 41, are there any changes? Aye. Aye to no. Hutchings, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. Larson, aye to no. Salazar, no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 41, 26 aye, 5 no. Senate File 42, are there any changes? Hutchings, aye to no. Beitman, aye to no. Salazar, aye to no. Aye to no. Larson, no. McEwen,
No.
No. Bouchard, no. French, no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 42, 23 aye, 8 no. Senate File 43, are there any changes? Beitman, aye to no. Cooper, aye to no. Cole, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. Case, aye to no. Steinmetz, aye to no. Larson, no. Nethercott, no. Salazar, no. Barlow, no. French, no. Ide, no. Boner, no.
Driscoll.
Bouchard,
Sorry.
no. Driscoll, aye to no. Landon, I to no. Anderson, no. Brennan, no. Baldwin, no. Kinsky, no. Murphy, no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 43, 10 aye, 21 no. Senate File 44, are there any changes? Larson? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 44, 30 aye, 1 no. Senate File 78, are there any changes? Beitman? Aye to no. Aye. Aye to no. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Hutchings? No. Barlow? No. French? No. Steinmetz? No. Salazar? No. Bouchard? No. Kolb? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 78, 20 aye, 11 no. Senate File 50, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 50, 31 aye. Senate File 51, are there any changes? Larson? No? Ide? No. Steinmetz? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 51, 28 aye, 3 no. Senate File 52, are there any changes? Hutchings? Aye to no. Ide? Aye to no. Steinmetz? Aye to no. Kolb? Aye to no. Larson? No. McEwen? No. French? No. Bouchard? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 52, 23 aye, 8 no. Senate File 15, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 15, 31 aye. Senate File 16, are there any changes? Hicks, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 16, 30 aye, 1 no. And lastly, Senate File 17, are there any changes? Case? Aye to no. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 17, 30 aye, 1 no.
Thank you. The following bills having received the required approval of 2/3 elected members. Senate File 30, influencing jurors and witnesses, judges amendment, is assigned to committee number 1, Judiciary. Senate File 31, sex offender registration promoting obscenity, is referred to committee number 1, Judiciary. Senate File 32, hemp limitations on psychoactive substances, referred to committee number 1, Judiciary. Senate File 34, sex offender registration, registerable offenses, referred to committee number 1, Judiciary. Senate File 35, public records, Department of Correction Investigations, referred to committee number 1, Judiciary. Senate File 36, Uniform Child Abduction Prevention Act, referred to committee number 1, Judiciary. Senate File 9, Parental Rights and Education 1, referred to committee number 4, Education. Senate File 19, Developmental Preschool Funding, referred to committee number 4, Education. Senate File 3, State Employees Leave for Volunteer Firefighter or Volunteer EMS, is referred to committee number 10, Labor. Senate File 4, Rehiring Retired Firefighters, Continued Retirement Benefits, referred to committee number 10, Labor. Senate File 5, Organ Transplant Recipient Protection, referred to committee number 10, Labor. Senate File 6, Nursing Home Administrators Temporary Licenses, referred to committee number 10, Labor. Senate File 7, Behavioral Health Redesign, Vulnerable Adults, referred to committee number 10, Labor. Senate File 8, Health Insurance for Voluntary Emergency Responders, referred to committee number 10, Labor. Senate File 41, Banking Division Classification Salary Exemptions, referred to committee number 9, Minerals. Senate File 42, Low Carbon Reliable Energy Standards Amendments, referred to committee number 9, Minerals. Senate File 44, Limited Mining Operations Amendments, referred to committee number 9, Minerals. Senate File 50, Unincorporated Nonprofit DAOs, referred to committee number 9, Minerals. Senate File 51, Unlawful Dissemination of Misleading Synthetic Media, is referred to committee number 9, Minerals. Senate File 52, Wyoming Stable Token Act Amendments, referred to committee number 9, Minerals. Senate File 15, Exceptions of Retrocession Federal Military Installations, referred to committee number 8, Transportation. Senate File 16, Military Department Emergency Fire Suppression Account, referred to committee number 8, Transportation. Senate File 17, Plane Coordinate System Amendments, referred to committee number 8, Transportation. Senate File 33, Wyoming Rural Attorney Recruitment Program. Senate File 39, Firefighters Recruitment Film. Senate File 43, Pore Space Severances and Separate Conveyances Prohibited. And Senate File 78, Carbon Dioxide Enhanced Oil Recovery Stimulus, have failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, have failed introduction. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, February 12, 2024. Message number 1. Mr. President, the House of Representatives of the 67th Wyoming State Legislature budget session has been called to order by Speaker Albert Summers and is ready to receive any communications that you may desire to submit. From the House of Representatives, message number 2, February 12, 2024. Mr. President, the House of Representatives appointed the following employees for the 2024 budget session of the 67th Legislature, dispensing with further reading. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Mr. President, I move the Senate adjourn until 10 a.m. Tuesday, February 13th.
Thank you. Are there any announcements? Senator Land.
Excuse me, Mr. President, thank you. Your Committee One Judiciary will meet on Wednesday morning, 2 days from now, Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. in room W4 downstairs to take up the following bills. Senate File 35, Public Records, Department of Corrections Investigations. Senate File 30, Influencing Jurors and Witnesses, Judges Amendment. And if time permits, we'll take up Senate File 36, the Uniform Child Abduction Prevention Act. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your committee number 7, corporations, will meet in W110 tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. We're going to take up the following bills. Senate File 20, electricity rates for costs that do not benefit Wyoming. Senate File 21, public utilities, net power cost sharing ratio. And Senate File 22, Public Service Commission, electricity reliability. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 10, Labor and Health, will meet Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. to hear Senate File 3, State Employees Leave for Volunteer Fire or Volunteer EMS. Senate File 4, Rehiring Retired Firefighters, Continued Retirement Benefits. And Senate File 8, Health Insurance for Volunteer Emergency Responders. Thank you.
Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Appropriations Committee number 2 will meet at 8 a.m. tomorrow in, what's the number for the Appropriations Committee room?
302.
302, to hear the following bills. Senate File 001, the budget bill. SF 47, law enforcement retirement contributions. Senate File 48, patrol warden investigator retirement. Senate File 49, judicial retirement program contributions. Senate File 58, investment estate unemployment insurance trust fund. Senate File 59, federal unemployment compensation trust fund adjustment. Senate File 67, public employee retirement plan contributions. And we will continue with the consideration of those at noon if we don't get through them all. And that will be at SF 113. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources Committee, will meet tomorrow, Tuesday, February 13th, 2024 at 8 a.m. That is a time change. We're meeting in the morning now in Capitol Extension Room 6 and online to consider the following bills. Senate File 13, Federal Land Use Plans, Legal Actions Authorized. Senate File 12, Meat Processing Plants, Hides and Carcasses. Senate File 14, State Fair Board Powers and Responsibilities. And your Agriculture Committee will also meet upon adjournment in the Capitol Extension Auditorium and online for a hearing on the environmental impacts of net zero and carbon negative policies. Written comments may be submitted in person after the meeting or via email at the Senate Agriculture at wyoledge.gov. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Chairman, make sure you take a look at the bills that have appropriations in them so we can get them re-referred. Is there any re-referrals now? Okay, there is not. You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. Senate is adjourned until 10 a.m. Tuesday, February 13th. Thank you, everybody. Let's have a good evening. What?